This aspiration prayer comes from the Dzogchen Tantra called the Tantra of the Great Perfection, which shows the penetrating wisdom of Samantabhadra. In Tibetan, the short title of this Tantra is Gongpa Sangta Nigu, which means the Tantra of Penetrating Wisdom, or the Tantra of Transcendent Intention. In English, the prayer is entitled The Aspiration of Samantabhadra. It comes from the primordial Buddha of the Dzogchen lineage, known as Samantabhadra in Sanskrit, and Kuntazangpo in Tibetan. Kuntazangpo is the Buddha of Dharmakaya enlightenment, the enlightened body of truth. Dzog means to perfect or to complete, as well as to exhaust. Chen means great, so Dzogchen means great perfection, great completion, or great exhaustion. It is a state of being totally free. At this stage, you have exhausted every tiny bit of ego clinging, every element of emotional disturbances. Therefore, it is called great exhaustion. It is also called the great completion, because in that state, all the wisdom of Buddha is complete. All the elements of enlightenment are complete. There is nothing missing in this state. Finally, because your mind has never been polluted, it has always been in this state of complete purity. Therefore, it is called the Great Perfection. Any questions about that? I know that kind of reminds me of the title of Nemki Norbu's book, which is Dzogchen, the perfected state, or the self-perfected state, I think. Moving on. To convey fully the meaning of Dzogchen in English, the expression full stop is quite good. Full stop, period. This period is a little but very powerful dot called the full stop. There is the sense of being full, in that this dot has a circular form that is complete and full. At the same time, everything stops here. It doesn't go beyond this period. Dzogchen has a similar meaning. On the one hand, it has this meaning of fullness, which is why we use the term completion. It also has this meaning of stopping, which we express as exhaustion. Your whole expression of samsara has been exhausted, so it stops right here. It does not go beyond this. Therefore, Dzogchen is a giant full stop. This simple dot, this period called full stop, has a very interesting meaning. So from now on, whenever you see a full stop, remember Dzogchen. The Dzogchen lineage originated from the Dharmakaya Buddha called the Kuntazangpo Buddha. When we look at the tankas, the painted images, you usually see the Kuntazangpo Buddha on the top of Guru Rinpoche. Sometimes you see the Kuntazangpo Buddha alone. Sometimes you see him embraced with his consort, called the Kuntazangmo, in union. Kuntazangpo looks exactly like Shakyamuni Buddha in terms of shape and features, but he is blue in color, naked, and without any ornaments or clothing. He is completely naked reality. The primordial Buddha, Kuntazangpo, actually taught the Dzogchen Tantras. He transmitted these teachings without any words to the Sambhogakaya Buddha, Vajrasattva. From Vajrasattva, they came to the Nirmanakaya Vidyadhara, a human Vajra master called Dorje. Dorje was born in the northeast of India, in Udayana, the birthplace of Padmasambhava. In Udayana, there was a great Dharma king named Ashoka. He lived much earlier than the Ashoka we usually think of that built the stupa in Sarnath. This king Ashoka had a daughter, a princess called Prahadani. The princess was practicing celibacy. Once, while she was bathing in a beautiful lake, a beautiful white swan came in and touched her heart with his beak. Later, she had some visions. Afterwards, it was obvious that she had become pregnant. Perhaps this inconceivable story rings a bell. Remember, I had laid the ground earlier about the inconceivable truth. The princess gave birth to a beautiful son. However, because it was an immaculate conception, she thought the child must be a very bad demon, so she threw the baby into the garbage. This often happens in our world as well. The baby survived in the garbage for 49 days. Not only did the baby survive, but it was luminous and beautiful. Therefore, they decided that the child must be something special, and they nourished him. This little child became Dorje. Dorje was the first human master of the Dzogchen lineage, the first human holder of the Rigpa tradition. He received the transmission of all the Dzogchen Tantras and teachings directly from the Sambhogakaya Buddha Vajrasattva. Dorje transmitted the whole lineage to his hard son, Manjushramita, an Indian yogi. Manjushramita transmitted the lineage to Sri Simha, a Chinese yogi who lived in India. From Sri Simha, it was transmitted to our famous master, Guru Padmasambhava. If you look at how these transmissions took place, it's quite amazing. For example, when Sri Simha transmitted the lineage to Padmasambhava, it is said that he reduced Padmasambhava to the size and form of the syllable Om. Padmasambhava became the syllable Om. Sri Simha took this Om, put it on his tongue, and swallowed it. Then Padmasambhava came out from the other end. At that point, he had received the full transmission of Dzogchen. He received the full realization and the full experience of Ati Yoga. This is what we call inconceivable. And I think that this is also sometimes called crazy. Sri Simha also transmitted the lineage to both Farachana, Vairochana, and Vimalamitra. Later, these three masters, Padmasambhava, Vairochana, and Vimalamitra, came to Tibet. They brought this Vajrayana lineage transmission, called Dzogchen, to the Tibetan soil. They planted this teaching in the land of Tibet, in the culture and language of Tibet. From then on, we have had the continual lineage transmission of the Dzogchen Tantras, including this aspiration of Samantabhadra. With that lineage and transmission, this aspiration is very much connected to the Dzogchen practice and teachings. Vajrayana is also called the secret mantrayana. It is kept secret because there is the possibility of misunderstanding. There is the possibility of misleading oneself onto the wrong path, which is a path that goes against our motivation for liberation. Therefore, it is kept secret and taught between one Vajrayana master and one Vajrayana disciple. Sometimes tantric teachings are known as self-secret. They are not necessarily hidden by someone. They are called self-secret because the language of Tantra is secret. The symbolism of Tantra is secret, and the practice of Tantra is secret. If you read the Tantra, it's hard to understand. If you look at the iconography, what does it mean that these Buddhas have animal heads? It is a secret. Similarly, if you try to do tantric practice, it is secret. We sleep every night, but it has never become a practice for us. We have dreamed so many times in our life, but it has never become a practice for us. In Tantra, it is practice. It is self-secret practice. That secrecy has to be revealed by what we call the transmission lineage. Basically, all tantras are protected by the dakinis. Sometimes it is not very easy to receive their permission. As this is a democratic country, you may be able to get this book from an ordinary bookstore so anybody can read it. But that doesn't mean you are reading it in a Vajrayana sense. Just simply knowing how to explain some words doesn't mean we are actually teaching Dzogchen. Just simply meditating on some deities doesn't mean we are meditating on Dzogchen Tantra. What I mean by permission is the secret Mantrayana permission. It is permission for us to openly speak, to practice, and to realize. I'm not talking about little beautiful things called angels. I'm talking about dakinis. That's different. Therefore, I hope we have permission to read and practice such teachings.
We do.
Should I continue? Okay.
Anybody have any comments, questions? Thank you, Brandon, doing a great job. Again, this is very Vajrayana, but in most cases, Dzogchen is tied into Vajrayana quite deeply, although here we present it a little bit more bare bones, a little bit less married with Vajrayana. Of course, I still do mantras and all this stuff, but certainly I think it's accessible to those of you who are not heavily immersed in Vajrayana. There have been some people here with me in this group for a while now, and they don't have a strong Vajrayana background. Yeah, all the terminology, Sid, it slowly sort of, if you just don't try, believe it or not, it comes a lot more naturally. There's this weird thing that happens in regards to memory. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but you can remember things without trying. They can, if I think it has to do with just being fully present. And next thing you know, you remembered every detail and you didn't even put any effort into that. So, yeah, just the more we relax into it, the more the more things come clear. Here, Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche, who's very traditional, um, at the same time as presenting it for the modern audience, he's just talking about the importance of the lineage and also this side of all this that's out of the realm of imagination or what we would consider possible. I think there's an allegorical aspect to some of this where the teachings came from. They say Guru Padmasambhava was predicted by Buddha Shakyamuni, and in most religions that you see, there's some kind of yogi, some kind of practitioner who receives the teachings from God, from a deity, from wherever. And to me, this is just a correlation with when you rest in your wisdom mind, it can be like, and some people even call it channeling aliens, right? I make fun of that sometimes, but um, it's really just, in my opinion, when you rest in ineffability and to this true mind of yours, then it can seem like you're getting a transmission sometimes when you're doing artwork or writing or whatever. It can seem like there's a whole nother, like, infinite powerful cognizance or consciousness that's really that you're involved with at that point. And maybe you've all touched that to some extent, but when we get out of the way, it seems to be where we're in a kind of union with the more powerful consciousness. And at that point, that's how I think biblical texts and scriptures are written. you know, in previous Buddhist life of mine, I practiced Tantra. I confess I prefer our bare bones approach. It speaks more to how I roll. Yeah, but I've seen that your previous Vajrayana, I think, helped me, the group, and yourself in many ways. Because the great thing, we got to understand that Tibetan culture, and Tibetan Dharma is endangered. They're systematically wiping it out every decade. it's more and more significant, more substantial. So by us keeping it traditional, see, I insist that I keep it traditional, but I don't insist that you keep it traditional, right? I enjoy keeping it that way, and to me, it's an act of preservation in a major way too, kind of an act of rebellion. Interestingly enough, in one of those documentaries, they also said that there was a spiritual void in China because China obviously has become irreligious and sort of completely free of spirituality. But when they conquered Tibet, because all these Tibetans started to mingle with the Chinese, many Chinese are practicing Dharma now. So it's interesting how the invasion of Tibet actually led to Vajrayana spreading all over the world in a significant way. And for us, if you watch that documentary, you'll get to see how special the yogis are, how secret and coveted this Dzogchen practice has been, and how lucky we are to access it. I really love that this documentary ends with these Dzogchen nuns. To me, that's so awesome. I've always been sort of turned off by patriarchy, so to see some women there representing Dzogchen is pretty awesome. Um, okay, well, that's all I have really to say. Anybody else want to chime in?
I have a quick comment or question, maybe around. Um, so I haven't seen the documentary yet, but I will as soon as possible. It sounds really interesting. I was born in India in the north, so I've been to the Himalayas. I know, and I really like that area. So I know a little bit about it, although I've never been to Tibet, unfortunately. So, um, but I wanted. So you mentioned Dawei, that you can click a button and be part of a group, obviously, and teachings, get the teachings as opposed to this lady walking, I guess, for a long time and finding the gurus, etc. And then also you mentioned there's places which have energy like house, I believe. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but and then Shasta, and then of course there's Kailash. So I guess the question or comment is it still worthwhile as a practitioner going to some of these places or finding gurus in real life, etc.?
Yeah, well, to get the authentic teachings, you need to find those teachers who know them and know how to explain them and read that sort of twilight language and everything, and but also read it from you, be able to communicate with you and give you the right advice. I think it's very important to have a guide. So I would say yes to the question of is it worth it to seek out teachers. Although with the right teacher, you could pretty much be standalone at a very short time. Within a relatively short time, you ideally should be able to come into your practice as on your own with very not so much guidance needed. And that's that sort of, in my opinion, when you first get introduced to the nature of mind and you're familiarizing. But it wasn't very popular. It was in the culture to introduce somebody to the nature of mind, whether it was the words they were using or whether it was the circumstances of the people involved or the time and place. Because there's always got to be these four conditions, right? The right time, right place, right audience, right teacher. So if one of those things is out of whack, then it may not happen. And so, for example, in the documentary, one of the teachers was giving her pointing out instructions. Uh, whether she was seeing that or not, it didn't seem like it. She was sort of still stuck in her head, it looked like to me. But you see, so she traveled all that way and she's still stuck in her own head. You see the irony there? um, now, I do believe locations can be very, very special, but my opinion is that I like to cater to the people who can't get out of their fucking beds, to the people who are stuck in cities, or not that cities are a bad thing, but who might be isolated, whatever. I really go towards the so-called disadvantaged, right? So to me, I purposely keep this going for the people so they can connect. Uh, it's a little bit different, you know. If I'm some yogi in a cave that you have to walk thousands of miles just to see me, that's not really how I roll. I'm more like, hey, all you really need to do is get a good internet connection. you know, and me and you can talk, right? Uh, one teacher might tell you to do hundreds of thousands of prostrations. I probably won't do that. I'll tell you directly, and then if you keep on associating with me, then we'll continue to make sure that you have it. So maybe there's other people that approach it like that. For me, I don't play hard to get with Dzogchen, is basically what I'm saying. So it's a little bit different than it has been through many, many traditions, right? Am I even answering your question here? I feel like I digressed.
No, no, yeah, and I truly appreciate that. I feel
Oh,
privileged that I can receive these teachings. What about what about an actual physical place though? Like for example, when I did some long-term retreats, not really long-term, like 10 days or whatever. I guess it's long-term for me. But some of the meditation centers I went to, I felt like they had this special energy, which the outside world didn't. And maybe it was just my own mind just playing tricks. I don't know. But I guess
no,
there's.
it's like that because if everything is a manifestation of your mind, like all the elements, the earth and the wind and the water and the fire and everything, well, then you got to understand everything's sort of living, right? And so there are parts of your mind that you can see even when you're looking up at the sky. You're essentially looking at a vast part of your mind. So I certainly would say that locations can make a difference. That's why I'm out here off the grid on a Taos Mesa because for some reason I'm very sensitive to locations, myself. So yeah, I'll totally agree with you.
Thank you.
hmm But from Dzogchen, we have to understand that the main location is our awareness nature, our mind. And that's what you'll keep on hearing. Anything else should be more of well, I guess it would depend how sensitive you are. I feel like the closer you get towards enlightenment, your location might shift based on that. See? So who knows though? Maybe that's my own speculation. Yes, she is saying in a very light-hearted way, I take offense with the expression real life. I've attended real life centers. I saw with my own eyes a lot of real life pretense. I'm happy with this fake life here. Well, I was also going to comment on the fact that being in this virtual environment is brand new. This never happened in history. Where are we right now? you know? And to me, when you want to talk about sanctity, well, wow, I feel like the fact that we kind of exist in virtual space, to me, that's pretty sacred. We're like off the grid, you know? You have the north, south, west, east, but you don't. You have up and down, but where's virtual space in that? It's not even in that. It's completely in its own world. So in a way, it's pretty cool. Okay, well, did we end the chapter, Brandon?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can pretty much end it there then. Uh, and Brandon also saying here, having seen how knowledge degrades from generation to generation, especially the subtle teachings, I feel fortunate to have received the sublime truth. Yeah, me too. I was watching that documentary and I tried to convey to you all, how special you are for your practice. But if you watch this documentary, you really get to see it. I mean, these Anis are up in the Himalayas meditating in huts, eating like very little. They have to use yak shit for heat and, so on and so forth. And they do it all just for Dzogchen, you know. All right, well, go watch that if you haven't watched it. Slice did pretty good on those documentaries. I'm watching another talk right now on the five Buddha families. So in the next session, the emphasis has leaned into the five Buddha families because we're reading the Trengu Rinpoche text now. It's a very large text. Sorry, I had to. It's obviously not very big. It's like this big. But that topic can, yeah, be very, very broad. So anyway, we're continuing to read that, and then there's the talk by Lama Tsotrem Alyon on the five Buddha families, and identifying with the Buddha families. Uh, Maybe for some of you that helps. I don't know. I don't do that. I think all the Buddha families are in us. You don't need to pick a Buddha family, but if you like to, yeah, why not? Okay, any famous last words? Good, everybody good? All right. I hope your meditation's going well. It looks like we have a few recordings and things too. Doing lots of great Dharma activity. So do the silent sit that we did today and this reading of this Dzogchen text and the gathering together of all these yogis in virtual space. Whatever benefit, realization, whatever merit there is, there are beings in this very presence that are suffering. May we dedicate it to them. Gewa Magen Rodo Gunlano. Gewa Magen Rodo Gunlano. Gewa Magen Rodo Gunlano. Yeah, and even just doing that dedication mantra right there is an act of preserve, uh, preserving Tibet Dharma, this true ancient yogic Dharma that we're so lucky to be a part of, truly. So thank you for helping me keep it going, and that's why, in a way, it's good to keep our heart with Tibet because our roots are there. Our lineage roots are there. For some of you, you may have roots in other places, and that's wonderful. But definitely, the Dzogchen is rooted, and we give so much credit to Tibet and the Tibetans, and many Chinese practitioners too, and Indian as well, that help preserve it. Without them, uh, like they didn't even have quorum, for to create more monastics. They didn't even have the people until they found some Chinese monks that helped with that. So that's how bad it was getting there many times, almost extinct, but somehow we got it. Thank you, and please have a beautiful day, okay? Beautiful.